Okay, we're officially at 8:30 p.m. My name's Ron, I'm an alcoholic. Hey, how you all doing tonight? Quick couple announcements. This next weekend we have, it's going on in Philadelphia. It's the Liberty Bell Roundup. It's on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's very affordable. Speakers are coming in from all over the area. It's like $40. It's pretty, if you've never experienced one of them, it's good to get a first taste, first try, and hear some of the speakers. What we do here is try to bring every one of those speakers here for fun and for free. And that we actually have next week. We have a pretty exciting speaker coming in from California. So we'll be here for that. But anyway, that's a good start. It's on our Facebook page. We have a Facebook page called the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. It not only keeps you informed of what goes on with this group, but other things going on up and down the East Coast. There's something to do every single night in AA. It's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting, and it's nice to be connected. So look that up if you're on there. You can find our group on, we have a website too. Just Google Saturday Night 1 Hour Speaker Meeting, St. Paul's, Doylestown, PA, and it'll come up. Anyway, Mike's going to come up here and chair this meeting. Have a good time.
Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Mike and I'm an alcoholic. This is a 1 hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 p.m. in Doylestown, PA. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 to 7:30 right here. The purpose of the group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recovered, can you guys tell it's my first time up here? I hope everybody will. If you wish not to be recorded, simply as. Can't emphasize that. All right. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name? Hey, Gail, welcome. Hey, Brett, welcome. Hey, Dan, welcome. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. When anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table, marked big book and CD donations. If you'd like a CD of any speaker, past or present, see me or Ron before or after the meeting. They're available free of charge. And now I'm going to bring up Teresa to read the preamble.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Teresa. I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Maggie is going to come up and read the 12 steps of recovery.
Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm an alcoholic. Okay, the AA 12 steps of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now I'm going to turn the meeting back over to Mike.
The 7th tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I'd like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. The group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops. There's absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. That brings us to our speaker tonight. He's a very good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. This is John Q. from Highlands, New Jersey.
Hi everyone, my name is John. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm from the By the Book group in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey. It's about 80 miles up the road. If you're doing nothing Monday night, we'll be there at 7:30. So I want to thank Ron and the group for asking me to thank you, come and share at this meeting. It's always a privilege to be asked to do anything in Alcoholics Anonymous. And you know, Ron sent me a text asking me or telling me that you have a no profanity policy at this meeting, and I'm so glad he did. Not that I would violate it, because I don't. I respect Alcoholics Anonymous, but I think more people in AA these days need to be reminded that this is not the barroom. You know, I unfortunately. I don't know why, but it seems that there's a rash of people that just like to use words that are totally inappropriate. I think there's something magical that goes on in here. To me, it's like church. And, you know, if I encounter someone who does use profanity at a meeting, I'll ask them, do you curse in church? And they say no. I say, well, then don't do it here. So, but I'm glad that you acknowledge that. Not that it would be an issue with me, but I think we should all be respectful of the fellowship that saved our lives. So I've been sober more than half my life. So I have a lot of drinking stories to tell you, a lot of sobriety stories to tell you, and not enough time to do it all. I'm a very fortunate man who found these rooms, and I'll come up to that. But there's one thing, a couple of things I'm going to talk about. One of the things I'm going to talk about is what were the circumstances under which I first heard about AA, and more importantly, how did I get here? And while I'm speaking, I'm going to ask you to do the same. How did you get here? Because I'm going to circle back to that before I'm done. I have yet to meet an alcoholic whose life was going great. They were sitting at home in their easy chair, sipping on a martini, and said, you know what, I'm going to go to an AA meeting. You know, we don't get here by accident, and in my case, it clearly is divine providence, and I'll get to that. I kind of like, I'm kind of warm to the folks in Pennsylvania. My grandfather got off the boat from Ireland a long time ago and settled in Philadelphia, and in North Philadelphia. And my mom, as a young woman, took a job in New York and met my dad, and that's why I'm a New Yorker, and I am a New Yorker. I'm from Brooklyn, New York originally. But all my cousins are down here. South of Philadelphia, Ardmore, Wynwood, Drexel Hill, that part of the world. And I have a lot of fond memories of my childhood spending a lot of time here, because as you'll hear me say, my mom died at a very young, a young age for her, and certainly a young age for me. But I grew up as a kid who, I don't remember much about my early childhood, but one of the first events I remember was my mother passing away when I was 10 years old. And she died from a disease that I have, and all I have to do to keep it in control is not eat gluten. She died from something called celiac disease. They didn't know what it was back then, and she died at the age of 40. And I felt different, I just felt different. And along the same time, and that didn't make me the fact that I'm Irish, the fact that I'm from Brooklyn, the fact that I'm left-handed, the fact that my mother died when I was 10, has nothing to do with my alcoholism. But I started drinking at that age too. I loved the taste of booze. I just loved alcohol. I doubt there's anyone in this room that liked to drink any more than I did. I mean, if you did, God bless you. But I mean, I loved to drink. I loved everything about alcohol. The taste, the effect, the mood, everything. And, if God hadn't intervened the way he did, I know where I'd be today if I didn't stop when I did. I'd be long gone. I'd be 6 feet under somewhere. But I grew up as a kid who, I was a good kid. I characterized myself as a good kid. There's nothing I would do to hurt you. I believed in the golden rule. I was raised a Catholic. I had aspirations to be a priest. I pursued them in high school and in college. But I had a little problem with that. I like women too much. I've been married 4 times, so that tells you, so I kind of didn't listen to that part of school when they say you should only get married once when you're a Catholic, but in any event. But I was a good kid. And when I realized I didn't want to be a priest anymore, I got a job in Manhattan, and my boss kept encouraging me to go to college, and I finally enrolled in Fordham University at night. And what's interesting about that is back in those days, this is in the early 60s, the program that I enrolled in was a 6-year program with no deviation. You took the courses when they offered them to you. You didn't have choices. The only choice you had was your major. So I got to know this class. I got to know the people in the class. And of course, I sought out all the people that drank like me. And interestingly enough, we all graduated, and 5 years after our graduation in 1966, we began to have reunions of not the class, but the people who drank in the bar. Because we were in Lower Manhattan, and we drank in 2 different bars. And we had these reunions for about 25 or 30 years. I haven't had them in a while, but it was interesting, the dynamics of the group. Some died. But gradually, one after the other were sober members of AA. And we'd have these reunions in a bar in the Bronx someplace. And a couple of us who were now sober would try to get one of our friends who was still drinking between us and 12-step them at the reunion party. We haven't had a reunion like that for a long time. I guess, I don't know, people just wander away. But as a kid, as I said, I was a good kid. And when I came to you, when I eventually came to you, I had no decency in me whatsoever. I had no morals. I had no conscience. There was nothing I wouldn't have done to get a drink. And that's a far cry from the boy I was raised to be. And in some ways, I look back at my early childhood, which was simplistic, just lead a good life, help other people, and that's kind of like what I try to do today. You know, I've kind of come full circle in many ways in that regard, in that sense. But in any event, after I started dating my girl I met at work, and we got married in 1966 upon my graduation from Fordham. And a year later, we had my daughter, Suzanne, who just turned 52. It's hard to believe that I have a 52-year-old daughter, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I do, and I'm 77 years old. I've been sober for over 40 years, and I tell you, I lead a great life now. But I enrolled in law school at night. I was working for this company. I was a superstar of this bank in Manhattan. I'm an accountant by profession and by training, and I was rising to the top. I was advancing quickly. I became the manager of the corporate tax department when I was in my late 20s. And then one day in 1969, September 15th to be precise, all the bank's tax returns were due, and they weren't filed on time because I was drunk. And needless to say, I lost that job, and that began a series of jobs that I lost because of my drinking. But the thing I don't want to forget is how I treated my little girl. After she was born, we had a house in Brooklyn. Right down the street, next block away was a park. And by this time, I had become a morning drinker. And let me tell you why I became a morning drinker. I was a daily drinker for a long time. And before, and I should backtrack, before my daughter was born, I was every day in a bar in Lower Manhattan, right down by Trinity Church. We'd all be in the bar at noon when the 12 o'clock bells were ringing, and I'll never forget this. It was like a ballet. All these guys were drinking martinis, me and 2 or 3 other guys, and the bartender would just pour them out, and so, you know, he would fill the last glass to the top, and nothing was left over. And none of us would talk to each other because we were still hungover from the night before. And then, like a ballet, we'd all bend over this way and lap our drink because none of us could pick it up and hold it. And we drink it like my dog drinks his water today. And after a couple of swallows of this, oh, it was great. The hands were up in the air, we were drinking, the pinky was up in the air. So I did this every day. And one day, this guy next to me says, you know, I notice that you're shaking all the time. You have to bend over to drink. He said, did you ever think about drinking when you get up in the morning? And I said, no. He said, well, think about it. All the pain and misery that you're going through right now, you could avoid if you started drinking when you got up. You know what? It made sense. So from that day until the last day, I was a morning drinker. And let me describe one of my morning drinks to you. And what I do is, first of all, and this is going forward a couple of years because I do want to come back to my daughter. I would not be able to sleep the night through. I'd have a drink on my end table just to put myself back to sleep. And by this time I was living down in Ocean County, New Jersey, so it was a hike to get to New York, and I'd have to get up pretty early. And I'd get up around 5 o'clock, and I'd get into the bathroom, down on my hands and knees, and vomit. Get up all the garbage that was in my stomach so that I could drink successfully. And I'd sweat, but once I got that drink down, that ease and comfort just came back, and that was a typical morning. And then I'd go up to the city, and New York is loaded with bars, and they're open all hours of the day. And I used to go into this one bar in the morning, and get myself a seat, and I'd be sitting next to people like you, and I'd start to tell them how I just got off the night shift. They didn't care. They were there for the same reason I was, but that was my life. But I want to go back to my daughter. So my daughter was just a little girl, maybe 2, 3 years old, and she'd say to me on Dad, so I'm a morning drinker. That's why I digressed. I'm a morning drinker. I'd be sitting down in the living room watching cartoons, drinking vodka every Saturday. That was my Saturday morning. And Suzanne would come down and say, Daddy, can we go to the park? And I'd say, sure. And I meant it, sure. How many times do you think I got to the park? Hardly ever. Hardly ever. And, I'd give her and then at night, I'd come home late at night. I mean, the party continued. I did nothing right in my marriage to Marguerite, nothing. And I'd come home late at night, half in the bag, and I'd go into my daughter's bedroom, I'd pick her up, I'd nudge her a little bit, make her look at me, she'd smile, I'd give her a kiss, and that was my idea of being a father. And today I'm a father to her. And I'm a grandfather to her kids. But I did a horrible job when she was a little girl. And then when she was 4 years old, I walked out on her because I was sitting across the bar in Lower Manhattan, and there was this beautiful young lady with jet black hair sitting across from me, and I fell in love. And, with all the problems I was having with my wife, all created by me because of my drinking and my behavior, I started to get involved with this other girl. And eventually I moved out. I didn't know this, but my first wife was beginning divorce proceedings anyway. But I remember the day I walked out of the house with a couple of suitcases and walked to the subway, went up to the World Trade Center and took the train across the river to New Jersey and moved into an apartment in Jersey City. And, for a bit I saw my daughter, not very much, but, there's things in my life that, I have to accept the fact they happened. I can't undo them. You can't unring a bell. But fortunately today we have a great relationship. I got sober when she was 10 years old, and we have a great relationship today. She breaks my anonymity all the time because anytime she encounters somebody that has a problem with alcohol, she said, my dad can help you, And she's very proud of me, and that's only because of you. And I'm just I'm jumping around a bit, but after I got sober, I started inviting her to my anniversaries, and she wouldn't come. And I found out years later why she wouldn't come. She wouldn't come because she was embarrassed that I was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. She knew nothing about you. She knew nothing about us. She was embarrassed that I was a member of AA. Not that I was an alcoholic, that I was a member of AA. And somehow I tricked her into coming to one of my anniversaries, and what she saw was folks like you caring for each other, caring for me, and she wrote a paper about this. That's how I know all this, and I still have that paper at home. She wrote this for school. And she became so enamored with the people in AA that she realized that this was not a bad group of people to be a part of. And but the damage, and I found out after I got sober that my daughter had sought out psychological help because of her dad walked out on her. And for a couple of years I did not see her because I wasn't paying my alimony and my child support. And what do I do when I have a problem? I fall, I hide. I just hide. So 1970, 71, around there, I wasn't yet 30. And I was scared because, I knew that alcoholism could be fatal. My dad was an alcoholic. He died a horrible death a year before I got sober. But he had friends in Brooklyn. I used to invite these guys over to his house, my house, and they'd sit and get drunk and sing Irish songs. And I noticed that a couple of them were not looking too good. And this one guy, Neil in particular, if Neil were in the room right now, you'd love him. I mean, he was just a very friendly type of guy, very outgoing, type of person that all of us would probably warm up to. And one day I noticed Neil was as yellow as, pick something yellow. He was yellow. His eyes were red, beet red, and I found out he died from cirrhosis of the liver. So I knew that alcoholism could be fatal, but I also believed that it would never happen to me. You know, I thought I was unique, I thought I was indestructible, I thought nothing bad would ever happen to me until it did. And one day, I start turning yellow. I'm bleeding all over the place. You know, there's the train ride from where I lived in Brooklyn to Lower Manhattan is about a half hour. And I used to take this train every day up to Wall Street. I mean, today if I'm on the train and I have to stand for a half hour, it's not a problem. And I wasn't yet 30 and I couldn't stand. I was so weak. I would ask people to let me sit down because I was going to pass out. I was bleeding from every orifice of my body. I was turning yellow and I was scared. And I kept thinking about Neil. What am I going to do? It's all I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous back then was probably from the movie The Lost Weekend with Ray Milland. It's a classic. It's an old movie, but it's worth watching. I mean, it's a little emphasized with the DTs and all that, but you'll get the point. It's a great movie. And that's all I knew about you. I knew nothing about stopping drinking. Why would I stop? You know, I'm Irish. I'm paying the price of my habit. But I was scared. So I went to a doctor on the other side of Brooklyn. I don't know how I found him. And he took some blood. And, you know, this is 40 some odd years ago. And you didn't get results immediately. You had to wait a couple of days. And he calls me up. And he said, I have a room for you in Long Island College Hospital. I have a bed for you. I'll meet you there now. And turns out what I had was alcoholic hepatitis, which is basically, I was 2 or 3 drinks shy of cirrhosis. And what he said to me was, John, you can never drink again, because if you drink, you're going to die. What he didn't say to me was, John, there's a bunch of people called Alcoholics Anonymous. Why don't you check them out? He never mentioned AA. So why would I come here? But the fact that he didn't mention that to me bothered me later when I did get sober, and I'm going to come back to that. So I was scared enough not to drink for nearly 3 years. But nothing changed. Nothing changed. I never heard about the 12 steps. I never heard about the 12 traditions. I never heard about the 12 concepts. Why would I change? Why would I do anything? All I did was not drink. My values were still in the toilet. I resumed a little bit of involvement with my daughter because I was now not drinking, so I could go over there and see her a little bit, blah, blah, blah. But that was to change because I did not stay sober. That is not my sobriety date. And what happened was my now second wife, Joan, lost a baby. And I was devastated because I wanted to have another child. And she lost the baby, and I took her down to Bermuda just to make her feel good and, relax. And I had been to Bermuda a few times. And Bermuda and all the Caribbean islands, they make these beautiful rum swizzle drinks. I could just bathe in those things. I love them. So I go down to Bermuda, and now it's been about 2.5, 3 years since I had a drink. And I'm saying to myself, can I or can't I? Because I was concerned about my liver. And so I decided to have 1 or 2 at dinner. And I did. For 3 days, I had 1 or 2 at dinner. And I'll tell you, when I got up the next morning after dinner, I couldn't wait for dinner that night because I wanted another rum swizzle. So I came home, and I didn't drink for a while, but you know what? I had picked up the first drink already. I was defenseless. So, being the smart guy that I am, I rationalized, well, if I drink rum or scotch or vodka, because scotch and vodka were my drinks of choice when my liver failed. So I decided I'm going to become a wine connoisseur. And I would call Joan up, and I'd say, what are we having for dinner tonight? And she'd say, whatever. And I'd bring home the appropriate wine. I thought I was, and I'd have a bottle, just a bottle. And God forbid if she had any, because, but I was hooked. And I was doing this every night, and I was concerned about my liver. So I went to a doctor in Jersey City, and I said, I had alcoholic hepatitis a while ago. I just want to get my liver checked. And the enzymes were getting, they were getting higher and higher. And I'd check it out a couple of months later with a different doctor. I didn't want to go back to the same guy. And then the enzymes were out of control, but I was out of control. So I started drinking Gallo Hardy Burgundy by the gallon. The gallon. Now, if you drink wine, unfortunately, hopefully no one in this room is drinking wine, but people who do drink wine, if you stand next to them, you can smell it. So I started thinking, I can't drink wine in the morning because people are going to smell it. And we all know what doesn't smell, right? Vodka. Which is not true, but I thought it was true. So I had to, out of necessity, go back to vodka. I had to, just for self-preservation. And all bets were off at this point. I was gone. I was hooked. A few other things happened. I wound up, we bought a house down in Jackson in Ocean County, and one morning I had a very serious car accident, which I don't remember. I drove right into a telephone pole. My face was badly cut up, lost a tooth or two. My teeth came through my gums, lots of stitches in there. And the cops asked me what happened. I said, I got cut off. I don't remember. All I remember is the telephone pole leaning on the windshield. Fortunately, I had a seatbelt on, but I did hit the steering wheel. And you know what I learned from that experience? You remember what I said, how my drinking pattern was? I'd have to put myself to sleep at night by having another drink, and that's what I was doing. My learning experience from that experience was, I'd better get a better night's sleep the next time before I drink. Not, don't drink. Not, certainly not come here, because I knew nothing about you. And that's what I learned. But then began a period of my life, because the insanity was, I was insane. I wasn't seeing my daughter. I had lost another job. My life was in turmoil. I had friends. I've left out a lot of my story, but I've been locked up. I've been arrested. I hit a cop outside of New York City after a Giant game one day, and I spent the night in jail. And some of my friends that were with me said to me later, "We don't want to hang around with you anymore. You get us in trouble all the time." And I thought they had the problem, But I had no more friends. I had no God. I believed in nothing. My higher power had become the bottle, the next drink. Where is it coming from? When am I going to have it? That's how I lived my life. So I began a period. Have you ever seen a gerbil in those little things they keep running around? That was me, because I wanted to stop drinking. I desperately wanted to stop drinking because I had done that for 3 years. I knew I could live life without alcohol. But I tell you that every time I tried to stop drinking, the pain was, I couldn't bear the pain. And so what would I do? I'd pick up another drink. And this went on for months. And then finally in December of 1976, I had enough. And I had a plan. And my plan was to get myself into a hospital, detox, get out of the hospital, and live life happily ever after without alcohol and without AA. I had no plans of doing anything with you guys, none, believe me. So I made a phone call, The local hospital in Lakewood, New Jersey had an alcoholism unit. I called up. I thought I was going to be admitted to that hospital, withdraw with supervision so I didn't have to drink. But she sends me off to a place called Princeton House in Princeton, New Jersey, which is a psychiatric hospital that treats people like us. It treats people that have drug problems, and it treats people that have other mental issues. Now, I've been beaten up in the streets of Manhattan. I've been in the gutter. I've been in jails. But being with people like you in a psychiatric hospital being treated for alcoholism was the most humiliating experience of my life. I was humiliated. Because I did not need anybody. I did not want anybody. I certainly didn't want people like you around me, you know. I was just going to beat this by myself. And I wasn't going to admit any weaknesses or any frailties or show any emotion to you that I was at all weak. Now, I don't know where that comes from. I was never taught that, but that's the way it was, you know. So I'm in Princeton House, and I remember the day I got admitted, 2 guys came into my room, and they said, and they were patients, and they introduced themselves. One said, I'm Joe. One said, I'm Pete. We're alcoholics. We're here too, and you know, we just want to help you. And I said, get the hell out of here. I don't want to talk to you. But these 2 guys fed me that night because I couldn't hold a fork. They fed me the next morning. I couldn't hold a fork. I couldn't hold a cup. I couldn't, I was a mess, physical mess. And in Princeton House, I learned a couple of things. I learned that alcoholism was a 3-fold disease, physical, mental, and spiritual. And I admitted to having the physical part of the disease. Mentally and spiritually, I thought I was as fit as a fiddle. And you know, the more I come to meetings, if there are indeed 3 parts, the more I come to meetings, I realized, although I was beaten up physically, I was in bad shape. And you'll hear that in a minute. But I suffered spiritually and emotionally the most. And then on a Saturday night, they dragged us into this AA meeting, which I did not want to go to, but I had to. And people from the outside came into the meeting, people like you, some dressed up in suits and tie, you know, and you're all laughing, just like you're doing tonight. You like each other, you're smiling, you know, and I sat there and I hated every one of you because you were doing exactly what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to get from point A to point B. And then I heard my very first speaker in AA, whose name was Suzanne. Now, Suzanne, at that point in time, had been sober for 5 years. She had lived on Skid Row in Newark. She had cirrhosis of the liver. And there she is 5 years later, dressed like a queen. An elderly woman, probably younger than I am now, but I thought she was old. And she's telling the story. So I came to my conclusion that you guys in AA were all a bunch of weaklings. Because why would a woman who obviously had her life back together need to come to a meeting on a Saturday night and tell you what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now? And it's amazing, I'm doing that some 40 years later, aren't I, you know? But back then I said, it's useless, what's the point? So I concluded that you needed each other, I didn't need you, you know? So a day or 2 later, one of my co-patients, who happened to be a veteran of going into Princeton House, says, you know, I said, I don't want to be here over the holidays, not that I had any place to go. Because I had already left my second wife, was living with another woman who eventually became my third wife, on my first anniversary in sobriety. You know, we have a saying in AA, don't make any major decisions in your first year or 2. I didn't think that applied to me, and it nearly cost me my sobriety, but that's a story for another day. In any event, where was I? I was living with, I got out of there. I got out of Princeton House. I went home, and I didn't drink. I didn't go to meetings, and I got a job in a real estate office in Monmouth County, and I was going to try to make my life come back to some degree of sanity and decency. And at night, they'd break out the Budweiser cans after the day of work, and I'd say, not for me, I'm an alcoholic. And, I was wearing it like a badge of honor, and I didn't drink. Until one night, somebody walked in with a pan of brownies, mixed with what we now fondly refer to as non-conference approved substances, pot. And I had found the perfect alternative to alcohol. Within a day, I was smoking around the clock. I knew where to get my next stash. I was so hooked on this stuff because I kept my sanity, I knew what I was doing. Things moved a little slower, but I knew what I was doing. I had found the perfect alternative to alcohol. Hooray. One problem, it made me thirsty. And I had to go back to the thing that I loved the most, which was alcohol. And at this point in my life, and the story's almost over, the part of my insane life is almost over. At this time in my life, if I had 1 or 2 beers, I was totally wiped out. In my heyday, and I'm not saying this to brag, I'm just telling you the effects of alcoholism. I could drink 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 quarts of vodka a day and not get drunk. At the end, 2 beers and I was wiped out. My system just couldn't tolerate it. But what came back with the alcohol? The same feelings of remorse, loneliness, despair. My life is totally screwed up. What do I do? And I knew that you guys were here, but didn't even enter into it. So I remember the day. I remember making this phone call. I called the woman a year later, almost a year later, I called the woman who had put me in Princeton House the year prior. And I cried. I remember the conversation. I cried on the phone like a baby. I said, I can't stop drinking. She said, John, you're an alcoholic. Why don't you go to an AA meeting? I'll tell you where they are. And I said, no, I don't want to go to an AA meeting because the impression I had from that Saturday night meeting was you were a bunch of losers. She said, will you at least talk to a member of AA? And I said, I'll do that. And the guy called me, and talk about divine intervention, because the story, when I tell this part of my story, I can't believe it happened. He told me about himself. He didn't talk to me about me. He talked to me about himself. And this guy had led a horrible life, and he was now sober a couple of years. He told me where he went to meetings. He gave me a great deal of hope in the conversation. He encouraged me to come to meetings, and I remember the conversation. I said, Doug, look, I haven't had a drink today, but I feel like drinking. Is there anything I can do to get rid of this feeling? He said, sure, and he gave me 4 things. Drink orange juice, eat some honey, some vitamin B, and bananas. And guess what I did? I went out and bought bananas, honey, and vitamin B, and orange juice. But he also said, go to meetings. Well, I went out and got the bananas and the honey and all that stuff, and I felt better. Why would I want to come to a meeting? I'm not going to drink anymore. I had learned my lesson, right? So this went on for a couple of days, and Thanksgiving of 1977 came, and I was living with this woman that I mentioned I subsequently married. She had a big bottle of Chablis wine in the refrigerator on Thanksgiving. So I said, I'll just have 1 drink or a couple of drinks Thanksgiving, and when I get up tomorrow morning, I'll eat the bananas and the honey and I'll feel better. But that's not what happened. I drank that bottle of wine. I found another bottle. I think I drank everything in her liquor closet, at least not that night, for the following week, because I drank. And December the 1st, 1977, which God willing is the date of my last drink, I woke up and something was very wrong. I felt sick. I felt like I've never felt before. Sick. I didn't feel good. And something was wrong, and she got on the phone and she was encouraged to get me immediately to a hospital, which I did, and they stuck all sorts of things in me. And as you can see, I'm here. So I had learned my lesson. I'm never going to drink again. And I haven't. That was my last drink, but you still were not in the cards. Why would I need to come here if I'm not drinking? That's my mindset. You know, if I'm not drinking, why would I have to come to Alcoholics Anonymous? So I had no intention of coming here. But something that God works in strange, mysterious ways, and my nurse took a liking to me. And I never refused a date or a drink in my life up to that point. So we made a date. Now, mind you, I have a wife, I have a woman I'm living with, and I have a date with this nurse. December the 5th, 1977, I go down to her house in Toms River, and my plans for that night were a night of adult fun. No bowling, no movies, no dinner, just adult fun. And I'm being brutally honest, that's all I wanted to do. And I knock on the door, and a couple of kids open the door, and I say to myself, well, it's not going to happen here. So she comes out and she gets in the car, and I don't have the courage to say to her, where is the nearest motel? I say to her, where would you like to go? Hoping she'll say the nearest motel's right down the road. She didn't say that. What she said is, there's an AA meeting in Lakewood and there's an AA meeting in Bayville. Which one would you like to go to? So I went to my second meeting in Lakewood, 9 o'clock meeting, just for the sake of having a night of adult fun. She stayed in the car. I walked into the meeting. It was a speaker meeting. There were all 9 o'clock meetings back then. My plan was to just stay for a couple of minutes, turn around, walk out, and live my life happily ever after. Well, I have lived my life happily ever after, but not for the reasons that you think. What happened was the meeting had started, and the guy who was talking at the podium when I walked in sounded like it could have been the guy I talked to on the phone before Thanksgiving. The same guy that had told me about the honey and the vitamin B and all that kind of stuff. So my curiosity kept me in the room. As soon as the leader was going to, I didn't know how the format of the meeting was, but as soon as I knew it was him, I was going to leave. I was just curious. But he wasn't thanked by name. The leader came back up, thanked him, and he went and sat down. They brought up the second speaker, and that was the end of it. So I stayed for the entire meeting. And then, out of curiosity, I walked up to him after the meeting and said, is your name Doug? And he said, yes. I said, I talked to you a couple of weeks ago. He said, I remember you, you're John. And it was a pickup meeting. He wasn't supposed to be talking that night. And he brought over 5 other men, and they gave me the strongest AA message I've ever received in my life. They just said, John, we know how you feel. You don't ever have to be alone again. Corny stuff like that. But you know what? I believed them. These guys were telling me the truth. And then one of them said to me, John, we're going to a meeting tomorrow night. How about coming with us? I felt so good, and I said, sure. And that's how my journey began, because of the kindness of a couple of men who took the time to talk to me. And I can never repay that. I've tried. Now I'm going to tell you a few things about myself that I certainly am not bragging. I'm an alcoholic first. I will always be an alcoholic, but I've been privileged to have done some pretty special things in Alcoholics Anonymous. You remember that doctor I told you about that didn't say anything to me about AA? That bothered me, so I got involved in service at the local level, and it still is a concern of mine. And I'm going to ask you, before I sit down, I'm going to ask you to do 3 things. And Ron's going to check on you to make sure that you do these things. They're very easy, but I'm going to ask you to do 3 things between now and whenever you get around to it. So in any event, I got involved in service, and I was a delegate to the General Service Conference from Northern New Jersey in 1985 and 1986. And then I was privileged to be elected to the General Service Board of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I served as the trustee at large for the United States from 1989 to 1993. And I traveled all over the world on behalf of AA, and it was a great time in my life. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm going to tell you 2 stories about my experience as a trustee. I don't know if you're all familiar with the service structure of AA, but our service structure pertains only to the United States and Canada. All other countries have their own structures. And Bill Wilson, before he passed, wanted to have a meeting every 2 years of representatives from all the structures of the world. And this meeting is called the World Service Meeting, and they just had one in South Africa last October. And I was privileged on your behalf to represent all the groups in the US and Canada at 2 World Service meetings, one in Munich, Germany, right after the Berlin Wall came down, and the second one in New York. I just want to tell you one story about that first World Service meeting. There were only 39 of us representing all the structures in the world that had convened. And when the meeting ended, it was a 4-day meeting, and when the meeting ended, and I'd like you to try to visualize this, the chairman called up 15 of the World Service delegates, and he said, what we're going to do now, these 15 people represent the 15 different languages spoken at this World Service meeting. And one after the other, they all said the Serenity Prayer in their native language. Icelandic, Irish, English, French, Spanish, Swedish, Polish, Afrikaans, Japanese, on and on. And I'm holding the hand of Magnus Johansson, who's you think I'm big? Magnus was a guy from Iceland, huge guy. Tears are falling from his eyes. Michael Smith from Ireland was my buddy on my other side. We were all crying like babies because how did a drunk like me, laying in the gutter of Manhattan, who didn't want any part of you, get to a meeting like this? And it's only because I believed you. I believe those 5 guys. I've never doubted the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been a faithful member of AA ever since. The other story I want to tell you, and this is, it's good that you know where your money goes to when we pass the basket. We have an event called a regional forum. It's held every 2 years in the Northeast region. We just had one in New York, and in 1991 it was in Bethesda, Maryland. And if you remember your history in 1991, the Russians had withdrawn from Eastern Europe. They had just retreated. So AA was coming alive in all these countries, and I was giving a report because that was my job on the General Service Board, the International Theater. And I was giving this report about all these translations that we were doing in Czech and in Hungarian and in Polish and all this. And there was a guy in the room, and there were about 500 or 600 people in the room. He was a student from Kenya. And he stood up and he said, why don't we have a big book in Swahili? And I said, I don't know. Now, Swahili is a language spoken in Africa by about 25, 30 million people. And I said, I don't know. And what happened was, during that meeting, he and I met with the GSO staff member that was there, and Sarah told me that there was an effort made to translate the big book into Swahili years ago, but it was not a good translation. You know, we will allow anybody to translate our books into their language, but we in New York need to authenticate the translation to make sure that Bill's message is preserved. So the translation was not a good one, and it got scrapped. So it was my purview. I authorized the resurrection of the project, and a year later, the big book in Swahili was published. I have 3 books on my bookcase. I have one in English, I have one in Russian, which came out under my watch, and the one in Swahili. And these are the things that I lived through and was experienced because of the fact that I believed you nearly 42 years ago. So I've had a great life. I mean, I just got a new sponsor, a new sponsee, I should say. He's sober 63 days. I would have taken him here with me tonight, but I know he went to a meeting this morning. He's 61 years old. He went to the same seminary I did, the same college. He's a lawyer. And he just wandered into a meeting one night. I saw him sitting alone. And you know what I do in my home group? If I see someone I don't know, I go up and I talk to them. Because I don't want to feel the way I felt that night when I was in a meeting, you know. And I have a brand new, I sponsor one guy who has 59 years. All the guys I sponsor have time. You know, so they don't come to, so I got a new guy, and I'm all excited about it, you know, because and you know what? I'm going to take him through the book, and, you know, it's great. It's great. It's amazing how the cycle just relives itself, you know, that I'm thoroughly, and you know, the best part about AA, I don't know if you do 90 days celebrations down here, but we do up in New Jersey when somebody's celebrating 90 days of sobriety. That's probably my favorite AA event. When you see somebody coming up here and you know them from the day they walked in, and you see the transformation, and you know this works. You know, the power of God that I see in these rooms, it's incredible. And we all have an incredible gift, don't we? To help another alcoholic. You know, when all else fails, we can help another alcoholic, and it's proved itself over and over again. So I want to ask you to do 3 things. You all go to a doctor at one point in time or another. Does your doctor, you don't have to raise hands, but does your doctor know that you're a sober member of AA? You know, we all fill out the questionnaire about how much drink, do we smoke, how much coffee do we drink, how much alcohol do we drink. You are violating no tradition if you say to your doctor, do you know why I'm sober, doctor? Because I'm a sober member of AA. If somebody had done that for the doctor I went to in Brooklyn before I got there, maybe I would have spared myself some misery. But we have a responsibility in Alcoholics Anonymous to let people know that we're here. You know, the power of the AA program is getting the people into this room. And the 12-step, like it happened to me, like it happened to you. But we got to get them in here. There are alcoholics out there right now within an hour's drive or a mile of this meeting that are looking for how much do I have for the weekend. They don't know we're here. And we have to find a way to get our message to these folks. So the next time you go to your doctor, if you're comfortable doing it, tell the doctor that you're a sober member of AA. And oh, by the way, doctor, would you like to learn more about AA? And there's 2 things you can give them. We have a pamphlet. AA is a resource for the healthcare professional. And if you go on GSO's website and look for it, John Fromson, Fromson, he's a medical doctor, he's a psychiatrist, he was a trustee on the General Service Board, a non-alcoholic trustee. He's written a letter to the healthcare professionals about us that you can just give to your doctor. The second thing I'm going to ask you to do is get a copy of the Grapevine. AA Grapevine, you're all familiar with it? After you've read it, leave it someplace. Leave it on a bus. Leave it on a train. Leave it in your doctor's office. Leave it in a library. Leave it on a park bench. You never know who's going to pick it up and read it. I'm waiting for the day, and it's going to happen. I'm waiting for the day when somebody gets up at the podium and says, I came to AA because I read an AA Grapevine magazine in the park one day. And the last one, and the last one takes a little work on your part. Don't ever let anybody change any of the things behind me. You know, AA has survived 84 plus years now because of the principles that we have adhered to. And to be quite candid with you, I have 7 granddaughters. The oldest one has already demonstrated her need for our fellowship. She's 18. My other 18-year-old is not demonstrating such a need. But I may not be around when the time comes that she needs to come to meetings. But I want this program, this fellowship, to be here intact for her kids, for your kids, and generations to come. And it's our responsibility to make sure that happens. So I thank you for allowing me to come and be with you tonight. It was a pleasure, and God bless. Thanks.
Let's thank John one more time. Epic call. It's customary for us to form a line and thank our speakers. They come here at their own time and expense to share the message of hope and recovery. If you'd like to give us a hand afterwards, we have to put these chairs back. There's the schematics on the wall, 5 deep or 7 deep, 5 across. We've got a nice way of closing. Don't forget our sister group is a Big Book study, meets over at Salem on Thursday, 7:30 p.m. If you like big books, come see us. CDs are available then. Got a nice way of closing the kids' ones.